Hey, y'all, welcome to Cross Politic. Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy, and we got the Pope of our denomination.
Whoa,
Virgil.
whoa.
Pastor Virgil Hurt is in the studio with us.
I got my hat.
Gabe's got one for you, don't worry.
Make sure you guys stick around for the second segment. We got Blaine Canzati coming on also. It should be fun. And folks, we actually have kind of a spring tour coming up. We're going to be doing one-night shows in a couple, 4 cities in the spring.
4?
Maybe at least 3.
4.
I said 3 so far. This is how I work, Pastor Toby. I said, let's just do 3, and then I'm like, hey guys, I got a 4th.
He announces it on the show.
Yeah, that's what I do.
We're doing 4.
We're going to be in Dallas Fort Worth, a live show on March 16th. We got Pastor Wilson, Dr. Peter McCullough coming on that show.
Who's coming with us?
Pastor Wilson and Dr. Peter McCullough.
Like Peter McCullough of like Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. He's going to be live with us.
Hallelujah. Good. Hallelujah.
Those shows are going to be recorded live, and we'll have a live audience there. Tickets will be on sale soon, but just mark the date, March 16th. We're going to be in Rapid City on April 7th.
Back to Rapid City.
Back to Rapid City. We're going to be doing a God and Government kind of seminar that day, workshop that day.
They going to let us back. Huh?
And then a live show that night. Mark your calendars there.
Special guest to be announced.
And then we're going to be in Phoenix sometime in May.
That was really helpful.
Is that good?
We're coming to Phoenix.
Okay. Happy birthday, Biden administration. You know why it's happy birthday?
No.
1 year.
It's his 1 year?
Yeah.
See, Toby?
Oh.
You weren't.
That's why it's so infantile.
He celebrated his first, senile you meant, his first year with a 34% approval rating, sky-high inflation, and a press conference this past week is kind of part of this 2-hour nap, almost. Celebration. He said that he would, in the press conference, he said he would not worry so much if Russia had a minor incursion with Ukraine.
Minor incursion.
Yeah, like,
like a minor.
Did he misspeak? I don't think so. I think he said the quiet thing out loud. Sort of like a minor abortion.
Oh.
Maybe. President Zelensky clapped back on Twitter and said this: "We want to remind the great powers that there are no minor incursions on small nations."
Right.
And
that's the president of Ukraine.
He ain't wrong about
President
that.
Zelensky.
That's right. Russia-Ukrainian politics. Remember this. There's so much geopolitical stuff going on here. It's important to remember how loaded the geopolitical scene is here. Russia collusion, fake dossier files. You remember, FISA courts.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
The comprised FBI.
Also the compromised.
The compromise. Yeah, the comprise. Yeah.
I was like, the comprise? What do you comprise with FBI?
The call with President Trump with President of Ukraine where he got impeached for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was over quid pro quo stuff. Hunter Biden raked in millions serving on a board in Ukraine, on a utility board, while Joe Biden openly admitted quid pro quo on live stage. You remember that?
Right. Son of a gun.
Yeah, he said, son of a... He did it. Don't forget Crimea. That was a small incursion under President Obama's presidency and more. Now, this minor incursion, it's not a gaffe. I don't know we can't really call it that, but it forced Jen Psaki, right? That's the press. I can't. That's how I say it. Psaki to issue a non-statement about what President meant to say. She said this: President Biden has been clear with the Russian president. If any Russian military forces move across the Ukrainian border, that's a renewed invasion, and it will be met with a swift, severe, and united response from the United States and our allies. I don't really think Biden or Vladimir really respects Biden. I don't think I don't think that stance really.
Yeah, there's so much going on there.
Frightens her.
I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just but it's like every 5 minutes there's something new coming out of this Russia-Ukraine thing. And there's all kinds of corruption, all kinds of politics, and it keeps like bleeding into United States, American politics.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on. It's like water polo game. There's a whole lot of stuff going on
under the water.
Well,
I can't help but think though, like, to me, if it seems like the Democratic Party is in collusion with Russia. That's what it kind of seems like. I mean, they're the ones who pushed the dossier files. Right. They're the ones who used Russia against Trump.
Right.
And then now
you're just starting other conspiracy theories, and I'm watching Pastor Hurt over here shake his head with you like, yes. You agree with that, Pastor?
Yeah, there's lots of conspiracies, and most of them are true.
It's starting to be that way in 2020.
I was telling the guys that the CREC, the denomination that you're leading currently. I said leading currently. We have churches, international churches, and we have churches in Ukraine and Russia, Poland, and so on. And I was telling the guys earlier this week that we really ought to connect with some of those pastors. I'd love to talk with Pastor Boo Boo in Poland,
I want to talk to
or
him
Pastor Sansanich in Ukraine, or one of these. Some of these guys. See at least what the boots on the ground, their take is.
It's not pastors. A small incursion for them,
right? No.
Okay, first let me say this. This has been the weirdest presidency I've ever seen.
Right.
I have not, and I think Jason Whitlock really pointed this out, I've never seen a president and the vice president together so much making speeches.
Yeah.
I've never seen, we got to make sure we have the vice president out
holding
here.
His hand.
And she speaks first, and then the president speaks. And this is kind of, I've never seen that. And so it's kind of like this baby. And I've never seen so much of the White House making corrections for the president. What he meant to say was, and what's been really clear that the president said has been...
If Trump had said, if Russia makes a minor incursion, it won't be that big of a deal, Trump's head would be on a pike.
He would have been lit.
Here's what I want to
see collusion.
I want to say this too. I want to say that at least we know what he meant, right? We know what he meant. He wasn't talking about a small incursion, even though it might be how it came out. He actually meant to say that, hey, Russia don't go into the. Now, I guess Russia would have to figure this out from hearing Psaki talk about it.
I don't know.
But it's being corrected.
Sort of like interpretation in tongues.
Well, he could be doing what Mitch McConnell is doing, which is Mitch McConnell saying the quiet parts out loud like Biden.
This was a little cringe.
Your message for voters of color who are concerned that without the John L. Lewis Voting Rights Act, they're not going to be able to vote in the midterm.
Well, the concern is misplaced because if you look at the statistics, African American voters are voting in just as high a percentage as Americans.
What?
Recent survey, 94% of Americans thought it was easy to vote. This is not a problem. Turnout is up, biggest turnout since 1900. It's simply they're being sold a bill of goods to support a Democratic effort to federalize elections. As Senator Blunt pointed out, this goes back 20 years. The excuses change from time to time, but this has been a Democratic Party goal for decades.
Now, the part that's getting all the attention is African Americans have the same voting right as Americans. All right. Yeah. Now, let me put this in some
African Americans aren't Americans.
Let's just put this in some context real quick. The Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would have expanded voting access, and that's what they're just at the end of. They didn't actually get a chance.
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, yeah. Well, it would have made Election Day a national holiday and basically would have nationalized our voting system, which, in case you don't know, is completely in conflict with the Constitution, which you should always have in your pocket like Pastor Toby.
I think every pastor should have the Constitution in their pocket at all times just in case. Hey, this is Article 1, Section 4. The times and places and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof.
Oh.
Now, it does go on to say Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except to the place of choosing senators. But there's a few key things there. One is it only applies to national senators and representatives, U.S. senators and representatives. Congress can alter those laws, but it still says very clearly that the times, places, and manner of holding elections for them is prescribed by each state by the legislature thereof, not by the federal government.
Wow. What's the crazy part about this is that the threat of nationalizing elections isn't what seems to be getting all the attention right now.
Right.
What seems to be getting all the attention is the false representation of what Mitch McConnell said is all the rage.
Right. See, he's racist.
Yeah.
Dog whistle.
Mitch McConnell doesn't think African Americans are Americans. Just stop it. He misspoke.
Yeah.
And you'll misspeak one day. We all are going to misspeak one day. Gabe knows this. and at that point, you're going to want somebody to understand what you meant and not how bad you botched it. The real story is that black people do have a legitimate fear of losing voting rights. Why? Because it wasn't too long ago that they just got them in this generation.
That's right.
So it makes sense why they're sensitive about this, especially in this area. And I can see why black people truly are afraid. Their voting rights were just taken away from them. It wasn't too long ago that they didn't have them. And so it makes sense. But this is absolutely shameful that Democrats would use a fear like this that's
right.
deep in the heart of black folks to nationalize elections.
Yep.
I can't think of what would actually be worse for minorities and black people than a nationalized election.
A national police force.
Right.
Okay, now that's shots fired.
But this lines up perfectly though with the liberal religion. So the liberal religion though is that you have to have a centralized state to save the world. That's where your salvation comes from. Because Jesus is not Lord, because there's not a God in heaven,
right.
that you need this centralized power that will try to hold everything together
That's right.
and save the world.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
that's right.
and,
That's
and,
Machiavellian too.
and so you need this. And so when you have these smaller powers, it's
A threat?
It's a threat because these smaller powers are a threat to the unity of the whole.
Right.
And so that's why there's this centralization, creeping centralization motif. McConnell even mentions that. There's been for decades they've been trying to federalize the elections. But I mean, we don't have a good track record here because we went back, go back to the war between the states and
Exactly.
following that, it's like our only solution is to get the central government to force something through. And then even after the war between the states, you have 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, the Civil Rights Amendments, and it's the federal government forcing states to do things to make it happen. And so that's the salvation. That's our that America for a long time has been saying, if the federal government doesn't do it, it's not going to get done right.
Yeah. Pastor Hurt, I'm going to give you the last word on this before we move on, but I want to say this real quick. The thing that's bothered me, especially with my folks, my people, black people, we cannot have selective memory on this. Mm-hmm. We cannot have selective memory where we can remember the fact that, hey, we just got our voting rights in the last generation. We need to remember, too, the last time that things like this were nationalized, like, I don't know, the Fugitive Slave Act that stopped black people who were running away from bad slave masters, right? Running away to a free state, nationalized the right for bounty hunters to come to those states now and take black people back to their masters.
Right.
And then what was their recourse on a local level? They had none.
Right.
It was all nationalized. So we should don't have selective memory, have full memories and say, wait a second. I want to make sure I maintain my voting rights, but I don't want the federal government to nationalize that process.
Right. Your appeal is difficult. Now,
Absolutely.
Now
you don't have one.
All the way to Washington, D.C.
There's no
local people can oppress you, but at least you know their name.
Exactly. Right. You have to live with them. Pastor?
Yeah, well, I think that it's part of a push it's not just about the elections, but the whole idea of the elite or the technocracy, the experts that have to run everything. And that's always a disaster. And and it's a fundamental thing. I think it's one of the biggest issues we have right now, because if we don't have actually free and real elections, then we don't have a republic. That's a great danger to the whole stability of our country at this point.
Yeah.
Gabe, you don't get the last word.
Okay. All right, go, Toby. I'll bring it in. I'll bring it around because you guys missed a big point there.
Okay, well, thanks, Gabe. Save it for the next segment.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's job is on the line after apologizing for partying during the COVID lockdowns.
Mr. Speaker, I want to apologise. I know that millions of people across this country have made extraordinary sacrifices over the last 18 months. I know the anguish that they have been through, unable to mourn their relatives, unable to live their lives as they want, or to do the things they love. Number 10 is a big department with the garden as an extension of the office, which has been in constant use because of the role of fresh air in stopping the virus. And when I went into that garden just after 6 on the 20th of May, 2020, to thank groups of staff before going back into my office 25 minutes later to continue working, I believed implicitly that this was a work event. But, Mr. Speaker, with hindsight, I should have sent everyone back inside. I should have found some other way to thank them. And I should have recognised that even if it could be said technically to fall within the guidance, there would be millions and millions of people who simply would not see it that way.
Blah, 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 blah.
I wish our House was like that.
Well,
our Senate.
It is so much fun watching the British Parliament work when they're yelling at each other like this and jumping up and down and booing and cheering. It's like a soccer game in there. It's pretty hilarious. Did you catch that? That was the lamest apology I think I've ever heard.
I thought it was a work.
I thought it was a work meeting. There's all these people partying in the garden, drinking and stuff, and he says, I thought it was a work meeting.
It was 25 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. This is during lockdowns when I think you could only see like one or two other people outside of your household in Britain.
The same week he was partying in, this was what, May 2020, I think?
Yeah.
The Queen's husband had died.
Right.
And they couldn't have a public funeral, and so she couldn't really have a funeral with him that same week.
Yeah, he apologized to the Queen in the same apology statement. Of course, the opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer, ripped into him, like literally, like a couple of minutes after this. And then right on schedule, photos leaked of Starmer partying during lockdowns last May.
Look at it.
This image was captured in May 2021 showing Sir Keir holding a beer while visiting a Labour constituency office in Durham. England was in step 2 of Mr. Johnson's lockdown exit roadmap at the time, which stated that indoor mixing between households was not allowed unless it was for work. I guess he thought it was a work meeting.
It's a work meeting.
Clearly working.
With increasing calls for his resignation, Johnson sent up his Hail Mary this last week by announcing the end of all vaccine passports, mask mandates, and lockdown measures.
Return to Plan A in England and allow Plan B regulations to expire. As a result, from the start of Thursday next week, mandatory certification will end. Organisations can, of course, choose to use the NHS COVID pass voluntarily, but we will end the compulsory use of COVID status certification in England. From now on, the government is no longer asking people to work from home. And people should now speak to their employers about arrangements for returning to the office. And having looked at the data carefully, the Cabinet concluded that once regulations lapse, the government will no longer mandate the wearing of face masks anywhere. Mr. Speaker.
They're all laughing.
And they still got their masks on, though.
Mr. Speaker, from tomorrow, we will no longer require face masks in classrooms, and the Department for Education will shortly remove national guidance on their use in communal areas. In the country at large, we will continue to suggest the use of face coverings in enclosed or crowded spaces, particularly when you come into contact with people you don't normally meet. But we will trust the judgment of the British people. No longer criminalise anyone who chooses not to wear one.
Wow.
The government will also ease restrictions further on visits to care homes. And my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, will set out plans in the coming days. Mr. Speaker, as we return to Plan A, the House will know that some measures still remain, including...
Okay, Pastor, I just got to say this real quick.
Okay.
It's amazing. He's been on the floor talking without a mask on. Yeah. Now, I don't know how long these sessions last, but if he was outside of the work meeting without a mask on, and he's here on the floor,
It doesn't spread when you're standing
on the floor,
microphone. No, it doesn't. There were a couple of things in there. I mean, first of all, so this is a Hail Mary. His job is on the line, and clearly he's trying to buy off England. The UK.
He's trying to keep his PM job.
This is this is bread and circuses. Trying to keep him happy, and maybe he can get his job. He can keep his job, which doesn't seem likely.
You done messed up, Aaron.
Yeah, he did. He did. And
you don't think they really just started looking at the data?
Well, that was my second thing. Virgil was exactly. He says we've examined the data carefully and decided from now on we don't have to have mask mandates.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna be. Y'all want to play.
They playing.
What data? What data? Yeah. I thought that data is that data allowed on YouTube? Is that data allowed on Facebook or Twitter? Is that data? What data?
Well, we've been manipulated this whole 2-year pandemic with data.
Goodness.
So it's ridiculous.
Oh my goodness. One of the takeaways here is, this has been manifest through this whole thing. But when you reject God's law, everyone's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
When you reject God's law, everyone's a hypocrite. Everyone's guilty, and then everything just becomes manipulation. It's just buying off, and it's just horse trading.
Right.
When you don't have God's law, everyone's a hypocrite. Everything's manipulation. The yoke of man is heavy.
Yeah.
But the yoke of Christ is light. The law of God sets people free. And don't forget that the law of God includes how to deal with your sin.
That's right.
That's part of the law of God. Remember, Leviticus is part of the law of God. Is like, you're a sinner, you need blood.
Right.
And of course, that's been fulfilled in Jesus. So when we say law of God, I mean the 10 Commandments, and I also mean what to do when you break the 10 Commandments.
Right.
That's all part of the law of God. He knows we're fallen human beings. He knows that we're fallen sinners. We need grace. We need forgiveness.
He's provided a way of escape.
But if you don't have the blood of Jesus, if you don't have the law of God, the light yoke of Christ, then you have the heavy yoke of man, and there's no way out of your sin. Everybody's guilty. Everybody's ashamed. And that's all manipulation. I mean, that's what's going on high relief in British Parliament right now with Boris Johnson. I do wonder, practically, what do the end of lockdowns in the UK mean for the world?
Yeah.
It
does put some pressure on some things.
It's kind of radical.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this because they left the EU. EU. Yeah.
They also left the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Yeah. So I'm praying for that. My prayers came out. I said the thing in my head. But so I was thinking that it'd be a great time for everybody around them to isolate them because they don't. Again, we talked to Peter Hitchens about this. They're in atrophy right now. They can't make their own goods. They're dependent on everybody else around them. This would be a great time for the European Union to put
the pinch on.
Clamps down.
Put the pinch
anybody
on,
from there, you come here on no vaccine, can't come here and we're not going to do business with people who are there because you guys are all dirty and unclean. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way because politics does that. It doesn't say, oh, this makes sense. Let's all open up. Right. No. How can we dig the knife in a little deeper?
Again, because it's all about manipulation.
It's manipulation.
It's no freedom. It's not grace. It's not clean slates and just honest dealing. It's all about manipulating facts, manipulating goods, manipulating services to get people to do what you want.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it got harder for them just because, hey, if you get them to die for a little more, what kind of deals can you really make at the end of the day?
To watch and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Accountable
to You is a digital service that helps you while you're using your smartphone or computer. It opens the door. It helps you when temptation is coming. In a world saturated with pornography and other harmful content, what are you supposed to do? We need to take a proactive approach, welcoming transparency in our digital media choices. Accountable to You, that's the number 2, You, makes that easy. Their accountability software shares detailed activity reports from all your devices and your kids' devices in real time to the accountability partners that you choose. With accountability in place, your family can effectively guard against temptations online and live with purity and integrity. Learn more and try it free at Accountable to You. Again, the word accountable, the number 2, the word you.com/FLF.
Coming up, third segment with Pastor Hurt, the State of the Union of the CREC. We're going to talk about that. He's going to give us an update, what's going on there. But first, Blaine Kanzati with Idaho Family
Policy Center.
There we go. See, I had half of it.
IFPC.
Coming up next on Cross Politics.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
It's weird. I think America needs to follow Boris Johnson.
Especially with that hair.
Get rid of all the regulations.
Welcome back to Cross Politics on the one and only Fight Laugh Feast Network. Not so long ago, the American dream was alive and well. Employees who worked hard were rewarded, and employers looked for people who could, get this, do the job.
Pretty basic.
Not for people who have the right political views. Redballoon.work is a job site designed to get us back to what made American businesses successful. Free speech, hard work, and having fun.
Yeah! Sorry, Parliament.
If you're a free speech employer who wants to hire employees who focus on their work and not on identity politics, then post a job on redballoon.work. If you are an employee who's being censored at work or is being forced to comply with the current zeitgeist, post your resume on redballoon.work and look for a new job.
Amen.
Redballoon.work/FLF is even better because then they know we sent you.
Yeah, tell them.
It's the job site where free speech is still alive. Redballoon.work/FLF.
I just feel a little dumb reading that ad.
Okay.
Because
just a little.
Because it's like stating things that were so basic and so taken for granted.
Yeah.
Do we take those things for granted?
Where gravity still exists.
Yeah. There we go. Red balloon.
Speaking of gravity still existing, I think. Hey, we're really grateful to have with us on the show today Mr. Blaine Canzati. He serves as president of Idaho Family Policy Center.
Yes, sir.
Can you say that, Knox? Idaho Family Policy Center.
Idaho Family Policy Center.
Good job.
IFPC.
Good. He's leading the charge in Idaho by writing legislation to work for the end of abortion, protecting women in sports and bathrooms. Again, the grass is green and the sky is blue and gravity exists.
This is a woman.
And reestablish biblical justice in the public square in Idaho. Before joining the Idaho Family Policy Center, Blaine previously worked for the Family Policy Institute of Washington.
Yep.
He also spent several years teaching humanities, theology, and apologetics courses at a classical Christian high school in Fairfax, Virginia. He and his wife, Anna, I think they have 2 kids. Is that right, Blaine?
Yep.
They baptized, right, Blaine? They're baptized.
Praise
Jesus.
After good Puritans.
Blaine, thanks for joining us on Cross Politic.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me back. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start off by just asking you about the particular goals you have. Idaho legislative session just kicked off. And I know you're busy, and thanks for taking a few minutes of your day to talk to us. What are the big things that Idaho Family Policy Center is working on this session in the Idaho legislature?
Yeah, like most states, Idaho has a part-time state legislature, and we kicked off, 2 weeks ago now, just after the new year, and we'll go probably through March. So it's a race. It's a quick race for sure. But we have 3 big priorities for this legislative session. None of these bills have been introduced yet, so I'm going to have to be a bit secretive with exactly some of the details. But all 3 of them are really exciting. The first is we are going to amend our female genital mutilation statute that was passed by the state legislature unanimously back in 2018 to include a prohibition on sex reassignment surgeries, puberty blockers, and cross-sex hormones for minor children. So most people don't know that minor children can go to their local Planned Parenthood, start getting cross-sex hormones, get puberty blockers. These things cause irreversible sterility. Depending on the age that you go on them, your sexual functions may never develop. And then Planned Parenthood will ship you off down a pipeline to surgeries where you'll have, girls will have double mastectomies and hysterectomies at 14 years old, 15 years old. Boys will be literally castrated at, 14 years old. And so this is a big problem, especially since it's become a really popular thing. We're seeing a social contagion of kids dealing with gender dysphoria and what psychologists and psychiatrists are now calling rapid onset gender dysphoria, where a kid has a friend group who, maybe five friends, right, all come out as transgender at the same time, and the school counselor and maybe liberal parents and the doctor all say, man, we have to affirm their declaration that they're now of the other gender. We're going to push them down this route of gender affirming care. And Planned Parenthood, by the way, is the second largest provider of gender affirming care in the country. Of course.
Did you say in the state or just in the country?
In the country. And in the state of Idaho, I would assume they are number 1.
Yeah.
They got to be the dumbest institution ever created from sinful.
No, man, they're smart. That's the thing. So
no, they can't be smart.
Abortion is no longer the cash cow that it used to be for Planned Parenthood. So they've been diversifying their business
portfolio
and
chopping up body parts, though.
But Blaine, they're not helping themselves if they're going to remove the ovaries and the uterus from women. First of all, they're killing.
Don't tell them that, dog.
I'm sorry. They just kill off their clientele. It's just the dumbest institution I can think of is like, hey, let's kill people so we won't have any more people to kill. It's a perfect example of what happens when sinful man becomes consistent with his worldview. They kill themselves off at the end of the day, which is, that's crazy.
Here's the thing, Knox. So, a kid who starts hormone therapy at 13 years old, 14 years old, will have to be on hormones for the rest of their life.
Oh.
Regardless of whether they keep identifying as the other sex or whether they medically detransition back to their biological sex, their hormones, their body, it's just wrecked. Right. And they're going to need lifelong medical care. And guess where they're going to keep getting that from?
Right.
Planned Parenthood.
Wow.
So that's a big priority for us this year, is to take care of that issue. And we think that there's this big connection between female genital mutilation, right, that all the Democrats in the state voted to ban just a few years ago, and chemically and surgically castrating boys, right? Or removing entire reproductive organs.
Right.
Those two things are, if you say FGM is barbaric, let's say that actually removing those body parts, that's just as barbaric as well.
Right. Absolutely.
Just 20 years ago, I went to University of Idaho, and I remember my degree was in communications, but it was basically a degree in liberalism and feminism. And my teacher showed there's this documentary on women's circumcision, basically gender, mutilation.
Right.
And just how the feminists were so against it.
Right.
And they showed this doc and just how horrible, it wasn't too graphic, but it just like went through all these, tribal country in Africa, and just like, this is horrible. They need education and all this stuff. And look at the feminists and Planned Parenthood, all this stuff now. It's like, this is good.
So Blaine, this is one of three. What are the other two that you're looking at?
Yeah, so we're also looking to take care of the school bathroom, school locker room, and school shower issue. So the viewers might remember that back over the summer, the Biden administration reinterpreted Title IX, and specifically the prohibition on sex discrimination in Title IX, to also include a prohibition on discriminating against someone because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Yeah.
Executive order.
And it was essentially an executive order, and it forces schools that receive federal funds to allow, biological males in girls' bathrooms, locker room, showers. On overnight field trips, the boys have to be able to stay with the girls. And we think that's a bridge too far. Whenever you take the federal money, whenever you take the cheese, you have to step into the trap.
Yep.
And that trap always includes bad regulations, and you lose your state sovereignty, you lose your ability to govern your state education system. And so we think it's time for Idaho to tell the federal government to go pound sand. And it's time for Idaho to say, hey, you know what? We're not going to take this federal money anymore because we need to protect our girls.
Come on now.
So that's one of our big priorities for this year. And then the last one is modifying the heartbeat law that we got passed last year to include a private enforcement mechanism like what Texas did.
That's fun.
And in Texas, they've saved 19,000 babies in just the last few months. 19,000 babies. We're looking down the road, and we know that the Dobbs cases will come out this summer, right? We don't know exactly how the future of pro-life legislation is going to look past that. But until then, we can protect babies here in Idaho, significantly cut the abortion rate by allowing women and their families to sue the doctors. We're gonna increase the statutory damages. Texas, you could sue the doctor for $10,000. We're going to allow the people to sue doctors for $20,000 to try to encourage more lawsuits to be filed to shut down these abortion clinics and make abortionists think twice before they murder babies.
Incentives.
So I like all three of these. I like where they're going. I know this isn't the end. I know that you guys are moving somewhere, but here's the question I have. We are mostly a Republican setup here in Idaho. What's the likelihood of any one of these actually getting ground on the floor?
Well, you know what? We'll see. We haven't introduced any of the bills yet. All three are big lifts, and there's a significant portion of the Republican Party that's controlled by the Chamber of Commerce, controlled by business interests, and they don't want to touch these social issues. They just want to keep, incrementally reducing taxes and reducing government regulations so that businesses can thrive. That's great, but we need to build our system of law upon biblical morality. We need to promote justice, promote the common good, promote biblical values. And, we're not going to get there immediately, but as much as we can, right, aggressively push toward that goal. we'll see how the state legislature and how our governor responds to these bills. But
Blaine,
we're hopeful for all three.
I'm really appreciative of these things, and full disclosure, I'm actually on the board of
cheater
of Idaho Family Policy
That's
Center.
how Blaine's here again. So.
Yeah, Blaine's he's acting right too. He's like, my boss is in the room.
But I wanted to ask you about what about all the COVID lockdown emergency order stuff?
Yeah, Blaine.
Yes.
What about them orders?
Are we going to do what Boris Johnson just did?
and end it all?
Yeah.
I know. Like, we had the longest session in the history of Idaho last year. Basically fighting over what happened with Brad Little shutting us down and all the rest of it. Have any of those loopholes been closed off? I know there was a special session, and I think it was in November. What's the status of that? And are we any safer in Idaho, or will we be after this term from petty tyrants shutting us down?
Yeah.
Man, that's a tough question.
So
the legislature tried to address this issue last year.
Yeah.
And they did so partially. They gave themselves some oversight powers over governors who keep extending emergency powers. But so far, the legislature hasn't exercised those oversight powers and hasn't stopped the emergency. We still have an ongoing emergency in the state. The reason is that we can keep getting that federal money. And, unfortunately, I think that ship has sailed, and the appetite for reforming executive powers in Idaho among the state legislature is almost nil.
Wow.
And then we had that special session where the vaccine mandates, became a big issue.
Yep.
And so far, we haven't seen any bills in the last couple of weeks introduced on that topic. That ship might have sailed as well. So,
wow.
It's tough. Idaho's a 70-30 state, 70% Republican, and we can't rein in executive powers in a really significant way. We can't protect, bodily autonomy and God-given rights when it comes to experimental vaccines.
Man.
We have a lot of reforming to do in the state for sure.
I've just come to the conclusion that Democrats are liars. They lie about everything, Russia, whatever. And Republicans are cowards. It's like, that's where we're at. Like, it's a good generalization, I think.
So,
is that true, Pastor Hurt?
I think it is.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, that's 2 for 2 this show.
The Pope has spoken.
That's 2 for 2.
Agrees with you.
The CREC Pope is, Blaine, here's a question. You said we're 70-30, so that's like 70% Republicans, 30% Democrats, right?
Yeah.
And yet, it seems like there's two people in Idaho that are spending a lot of money as it comes to lobbying, and the Democrat Party is number 2. Big Pharma's number 1. That makes sense. They're number 1 probably everywhere. But the Democrats, why would they spend money in a place like Idaho where they have no advantage, and they're spending big money? They're outspending the Republicans 2 to 1 on this. Why are they here spending money on a 70-30 split?
Yeah, you know what it is, Knox? I've heard Toby say this. Even if the Christians aren't post-mill, the liberals are, and they understand the stakes, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth and where their hearts are. And Republicans in the state of Idaho aren't. And so what the Democrats and their lobbying groups do in states like Idaho, and it's really smart, they put tons of money into the more moderate Republicans,
right,
to keep moderate Republicans in office so that the true conservatives can't get their way in. And they also spend tons of money on lobbying, PR campaigns, marketing, etc., shaping public perception. Right? There really aren't. Idaho's a conservative state. There really aren't many conservative political groups in Idaho. Yeah. We're the only conservative Christian group in Idaho that's working on policy. So we are outnumbered. We're outfunded. We're it's crazy that even in a state like Idaho, the Democrats, man, they understand the stakes and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is.
We need to be. So what do you guys, to be able to do this, how can we put our money where our mouth is? What would it look like to help you guys out? What website, where could we go to support you? Because, we don't know it, man. The next 5 to 10 years, Idaho could be a completely different place in the way this is going. Because you said something so important, Blaine, the way that liberals and Democrats will frame public perception will change culture. They tell a better story, and we are in a battle and a war for the story, the narrative. Right. And so it makes, when you said that, man, it clicked for me. They're telling the story the way they want things to go, and we're just coasting around here like everything's okay and nothing's going to change.
We got 70%.
We got 70%. And the next thing we look up, it's going to be all gone. Like you said, some of those ships are going to sail. So how do we put our money where our mouth is?
Yeah, I'm always warning people. Colorado is a scary, scary vision of what the future of Idaho and other red states look like maybe 15 or 20 years down the road, unless conservative Christians start getting involved. Understanding the cultural mandate that the gospel is not just about salvation. The gospel is about transformation of everything. Jesus Christ is restoring all things to himself, reconciling all things, and everything's supposed to be sanctified unto him. Christians have to get that. They have to get involved. They have to start giving money to Christian organizations that are promoting biblical values. You can learn more about Idaho Family Policy Center at idahofamily.org. idahofamily.org. We're a 501c3 nonprofit Christian ministry, so gifts would be tax deductible, and we'd certainly appreciate the help. And there are other organizations in other states where your viewers are that are doing good work as well, and Christians have to start getting involved. They have to.
Find those organizations in your state and support them.
Did you hear that short homily that he just gave?
Yeah.
Everybody right now owes him an offering. IdahoFamily.org to pay your offering for that short homily from Blaine Kanzati. Blaine, appreciate you, brother. Praying for you guys, man, this session. Keep us posted. We'd love to have you back. More Cross Politic. Coming up next, the State of the CREC, State of the Union Address with Pastor Hurt. Can't wait to hear this. This is going to be so good. Next.
All right, I'm going to get my refill.
You just had that on the corner table the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody lubricates before the third segment. All right, stretch it out.
Y'all ready?
Toby just keeps the French press on the table during the show.
Here we go, especially when the presiding minister of the CREC is in the house. Hey, this segment's brought to you by the Mission of Armored Republic. That's the bad way to read that ad. The mission of Armored Republic is to honor Christ by equipping free men with tools of liberty necessary to preserve God-given rights. Yeah. In the Armored Republic, there's no king but Christ. You better give me a shotgun.
Amen.
Where's my shotgun? All right, there we go. Body armor is a tool of liberty. We create tools of liberty. Free men must remain ever vigilant against tyranny wherever it appears. God has given us the tools of liberty needed to defend the rights he's bestowed on us. Armored Republic is honored to offer you those tools. So go visit them and support us when you do at AR500. That's the letters AR, the number 500 armor.com.
Get one for each kid.
Body armor for all the kids.
You guys take and put your body armor on just to
Stocking
put it on
stuff.
every now.
Oh, it feels good. I feel manly putting that on.
Do that on Friday mornings before you record the show.
Well, then I realized, I never really want to use this stuff.
No.
This is a tool of liberty that
I want to have it. I never really want to use it.
You never need to use it. Hey, we are very grateful to have Pastor Virgil Hurt in the studio with us.
Yes.
He's the founding pastor of Providence Church in Lynchburg, Virginia, where he has served for 21 years. Is that accurate? Wow. He's served as the presiding minister of, he served as the presiding minister of the Council of the CREC, Community Reform Evangelical Church.
Our denomination that we're part of.
Since 2017. He's married to Katie, his childhood sweetheart, has 6 grown children, 8 grandchildren.
Woo.
And one time he was questioned by Moscow police for some brochures that might have been printed at the Kinko's he was the manager of.
Oh, really?
I remember.
Snuck that in there.
Yeah.
That was just on the bio on your church website. No, I'm kidding.
I didn't write that part.
You gotta have him explain himself.
I mean, I don't even remember all this story.
This is the Doug Jones play.
You were the
that was Doug Jones.
You were the manager of Kinko's in Moscow back in the day, right?
Correct. That was the beginning of you really can't do satire.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
So
everyone took it too seriously.
Yeah, there was some kind of promotion about why women should be able to go topless or something. And he posted a bunch of
there was
on U of
It was
I.
April Fool's.
Well, there was also there was a real topless car wash going on in our town at the time.
Yeah.
Oh.
So at the time, there was a loophole in the city code where
So y'all done cleaned the place up a lot then, huh?
So he posted these flyers that said all the speakers were going to speak topless at the University of Idaho.
Yeah, totally believable.
Which was pretty funny, but everybody believed it because you can't do satire. And then the police got involved. The University of Idaho was very upset.
Yeah. And all these people the talks were going to happen like Thursday night at 7 p.m. or something like that. All these people students started showing up.
And he had put together like titles of the talks. Yeah. Like,
burning your bras for Jesus or something. I don't know.
Wait a second. Did you say the University of Idaho was upset?
Yes.
Because Doug Jones took their letterhead and their logo and put it on the flyer to make it look like an official university
No, you understand.
sanctioned event.
But they were having topless women at the
car wash in town. That was in town. That was in the city.
But it's okay for them to do it if they were doing it. But you can't say they were doing it if they weren't doing it.
That's what made them mad. Hey, we did not lead this event.
That makes
They were just upset they didn't think about it first.
That makes sense.
But anyways, I just
so the cops called you because you printed the flyers.
Yeah, well, sort of.
Are you done?
He sent faxes from our store to University of Idaho, and they knew where the faxes came from.
Yep.
And then they wanted video of who did it. So, Doug Jones and I were shortly in Pastor Wilson's office saying, "Okay, what do we do?" I was afraid I was going to lose my job.
And now he's the presiding minister of the council. The Communion of Reformed Evangelical Church.
These are the kind of guys you want as presiding minister.
Exactly. This is one of the top reasons why we voted him in, and we're like, I don't know if we want him to leave.
It was my campaign promise.
I was questioned by Moscow PD.
So, as the Pope of the CREC, do you like that Pope, or do you like another word?
No, I don't like
presiding minister.
Pope.
Presiding minister.
Okay, it's hard to say. Presiding minister.
Or you can just call him the PM. That's kind of like the slang in the CREC.
The PM. So, what is the state of the CREC right now? Can you give us a State of the Union address with the CREC?
Yeah, I don't have anything particularly prepared along those lines, but I am very encouraged. I'm actually encouraged by the craziness and zaniness that's going on in the world. That's part of God's plan to transform the world for Christ. It's getting so crazy and so foolish that it's
lift that up a little more, Gabe, and put
that it's going to fall. Things are going to fall apart. And
so you say it's getting so zany and foolish that things will fall apart.
Yeah, they're going to fall apart, and we're already seeing that. And when things start to fall apart, people look for stability. And of course, the only true stability is going to be found in Christ and His kingdom among His people. And so, one of the things that we're seeing in the CREC, and I've been really encouraged by in the last couple of years, is we've really stuck to the basics, stuck to the things that we believe are true, which is that worship is a fundamental and central aspect of what it means to be a Christian.
Yes, yep.
And it orients and shapes and forms your whole entire life, that one day is a paradigm for every day and everyday Christian living. And we've always taught that. And now we had an opportunity to see if we actually really believed it, and we do.
Yeah.
And so that's been encouraging. And then, so you guys have experienced this here, and so we in Lynchburg, when people come, sometimes people come to our church, they've got a mask on, they're not one of our regular folk, and they come in, and everybody is completely normal, and they burst into tears. We've had that happen several times, and off comes the mask. And, somebody hugs them or shakes their hand. I mean, it's humanity. And so we're seeing that within our denomination, and it's really beautiful to see. And our churches are growing more rapidly than they've ever grown in the last 2 years. So it's neat to see that. It's exciting.
You were talking about earlier just kind of the caliber of people that are starting to see in the CRC is broader than it was before too. Would you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, in the past, because we're a Reformed denomination, we're pretty traditional worship, psalms and hymns and covenant renewal form of worship, that the people that have come our direction are already kind of going down that path. So they're learning about covenant theology. They maybe came across Douglas Wilson, started reading his books, and so they're going down that path. By the time they come to us, they're about 80 or 90% there already. And so, and they're pretty educated Christians, if you will. They're serious Christians. But recently, in the last couple of years, we've seen a real influx of people who are coming from a world not that world at all. So they're coming directly to us, say from a Baptist church or a modern evangelical church. And one of the things we're seeing, I heard these stories at council quite a bit this last October, conversion stories. So people coming to our churches who are not Christians, who are being pretty dramatically converted. And that's something that's new for us. Maybe it's new within the whole world of Presbyterianism. Because most of our people come to us from other churches. That's generally what happens.
Yeah.
They're looking for something deeper, something more meaningful, better teaching, better theology, better systematics, all that kind of stuff. But we're seeing a new kind of person come to us, and it's really exciting to see that. And I was just talking to Pastor Wilson the other day. When I was here, I used to live here in the 90s before I went off to plant our church, and we met every Friday for the prayer meeting of Reformation and Revival. It's still going on. That's probably been going on for 40 years now. And we believed at the time that Reformation comes first. You pray for Reformation, which we understood to be reading the Bible, transforming your life according to Scriptures, having a solid church.
Christians getting right with Jesus.
Basic Christian kind of discipleship and going back to the things that we had lost. So that was Reformation. But revival was when God begins to move in that Reformation, change people's hearts, sovereignly draw them to himself, and transform them by the Holy Spirit. And that we're seeing that. So after 40 years or whatever it is now for Pastor Wilson's ministry, 20 years of mine, and 20 some odd years of the CREC, we're beginning to see God do something in our midst that hasn't happened before, and it seems to be on the cusp, the beginnings of something that I would call revival, which is really exciting.
Last October, you invited us to Presbytery, which was really nice. It was great. It was my first time ever to go.
We don't know if you'll ever invite us back.
We don't.
We will. Glad to have you guys.
But one thing I was encouraged with was just how unified all the pastors and the leadership was. I've known some squabbles that's been happening over the last 10, 15 years in the denomination, which is typical of any denomination, actually. But it just the unity felt more than it had been in the past, and actually very palpable too. It was really encouraging.
That's what we call the gift of COVID.
Yeah. I think you're right.
And I it's been a tremendous blessing, and God is using it for good.
Yeah.
It's been true in our church. It's been true in our denomination. It reprioritizes things.
Explain what you mean by the gift of COVID. Like what happened with COVID that kind of
I think
created this?
Lots of things. Sort of the shutdowns, the vaccine mandates, mask mandates, the opposition from kind of the elites and the powers, if you will, political powers and corporate powers, and even the censorship, those kind of things. And then we see, fundamentally we're Christians. We're to worship God and we're to be together. We need to be together. And so the other are secondary squabbles, which we should have. That's part of being godly Christian men. We should debate things, and we should hold each other accountable, all that kind of thing. But the priority became clear to us, and we're all on the same team, and the fight is about the gospel and the Christian community and the kingdom of God and the growth of it, which we're all, because most of us are very strongly post-millennial in our eschatology. We have a very positive view about the future.
Right.
And now in the midst of this, this made-up crisis, but that becomes a real crisis, our brother in Canada, they're getting arrested and now these laws, it's real, but we're in it together, and it's been a tremendous boon to us, in numbers, like in the growth of our churches, but also I think in spiritual growth. I mean, our people are not afraid. And when you come to our churches and you see a bunch of people in a time when everyone's telling you should be afraid and our people are not afraid, that is, fear is contagious, but so is courage.
Amen.
Yeah, and one of the things that people see in our church is courage, and it's catching, and they love it.
One of the other things that Pastor Wilson's put it this way a few times, but I think one of the things that we share in common deeply throughout the CREC is an understanding of sphere sovereignty and the governments that God has established. And Pastor Wilson's put it, said that during the pandemic, sort of all the CREC pastors' inner Reconstructionists just come out.
Yeah,
that's sort of how he said. Rushdoony, or Bonson, or these people were some of the people that in the 70s and 80s were the ones teaching the most on sphere sovereignty. That God has established these governments in the world. There is a civil government and it has a job. There's a family government and there's a church government, and they have a little bit of overlapping in their circles, but mostly they have distinct jobs.
Right,
and that is a proclamation of the lordship of Jesus.
Right.
And I think, as you've had this massive statist overreach, you have to have the jab, you have to wear masks, you have to do this in your church services.
Right.
As soon as it's clear there's no immediate life-threatening situation here, you have no business here in the name of Jesus.
And, in the past, there wasn't challenge very much in our midst. We sometimes had to think about the family and the church.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you do that? Where's the authority and when does the church's authority go into the family and when does it not? But we didn't ever really have to think about it much with the civil magistrate.
Right.
And these last couple of years, we've really had to think about it. Romans 13, and do we have to obey them or do we not? What is their jurisdiction?
Yeah.
And that's been a healthy thing for the church.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Okay.
Because I've been cutting you off. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh,
it's your turn.
Thank you.
It's your turn.
I was hoping you were going to apologize to me after the show.
I'll give you some of my black privilege.
I've been I know a lot of the pastors up in Canada who have been fighting and getting arrested and all that stuff. They call them Billies up there.
Oh, really?
Let's go, Billy.
Oh, yeah.
They're the fighting pastors.
Those are the pastors that are actually fighting.
Yeah.
Like Billy Goats?
Yeah. I don't. Not Billy Goats, but anyways.
That's what I thought.
I've been. There was a long story short. The Gospel Coalition or Together for the Gospel, whichever one, they're both the same to me, has a presence up in Canada, and they wrote a blog post saying, "Hey, the Billies." They called him Billy. Pastor Billy. He's fighting Canada too much. He needs to chill out, kind of thing. And America, and particularly they were kind of taking shots at America for kind of getting into their space,
encouraging them to fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so now, it's stupid. But they printed up a Billy shirt and sent it to me and you guys. We got a Billy shirt. It's really cool. But all the churches up in Canada that I'm friends with, they either left their denomination, got kicked out of their denomination, or the denomination's been pretty awful during this whole problem that Canada is going through. And so I talked to one of the pastors on Thursday. I was like, man, I think you guys should really consider joining our denomination. Yeah. And the reason why I thought of this was because, for one, our denomination is the only denomination that I'm aware of. I think there might be some others out there where we both allow 1689 in Westminster. We both allow infant baptism and credo baptism in our denomination, and we don't separate over that. And so all those pastors up in Canada, they're Baptists and Presbyterians, so they could actually come into our
the Liberty Coalition guys are a mix of that.
Yeah. And so they could actually come into our denomination and fellowship. The other reason why I thought they should come into our denomination is because even though we're an international denomination, we're obviously perceived as an American denomination because that's where most of the churches are at.
American based.
And if James Coates gets arrested or something like that, and they got American denomination coming in and saying, "Hey, this is religious persecution, Canada, stop it."
Yeah.
That could have some real weight and authority into it. Yeah. What do you think are kind of like the good kind of churches that really fit? Not every church fits with the CREC, but what do you kind of think is a good kind of makeup for being in the CREC?
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know. It's similar to what's happening in our church. In the past, we thought we knew what the MO was for that person.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know now. And just like in our church, it's never been our desire to steal people from another church.
Yeah.
But if your pastor's not teaching you and being faithful and you're not getting the whole counsel of God and you want to come to my church, then come on over.
Yeah.
And now, if your church is not meeting and your church is making you wear masks, and certainly if your church is requiring you to take the vaccine or something like that, then come over here.
Right.
Now, the same thing is true denominationally. So that's one of the things that we're hearing right now. I'm getting lots of requests from all sorts of people. A lot of them, it's a little easier if they're already just independent, say Independent Baptist Church or something. A lot of the Presbyterian churches are not independent, but there are some that are. And so I say, come our way. We're not woke. We're not getting woke. We believe in all of the scriptures. We preach and teach faithfully. We teach strongly on marriage and family and raising kids and Christian education. Right. And we're solid on all of these things, and we're solid pretty much across the board. Not every CREC church is the same or, the same great level of church or whatever. We have a good, solid group of churches. But I am encouraging, if your church is wavering, if your denomination is wavering and you need stability and you need people to encourage you to be courageous and bold and stand up for God no matter what the consequences are, we're a good place to go.
Yeah,
I really liked how you organized the council in October with those talks. It was like a sort of mini conference kind of mixed into all the business.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was all on fighting the good fight was the theme of the council this year. And you had, was it 6 or 7 different men? Eight men,
talks,
pastors throughout the denomination, just giving, sort of 15, 20-minute charges on different aspects of the fight, of the good fight. I thought it was a wonderful way of organizing it. It was just sort of edifying, encouraging. But I think that very point you're making in terms of, you couldn't go to that council and come away wondering if the pastors in the denomination were teetering on the edge of going woke or going soft on male, female, or marriage or child rearing.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the work of the gospel in the world.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Even that, you bring that up, and in our denomination, because a lot of our churches are fairly liturgical, and we have some guys who wear robes, and some guys who wear collars, and some guys who preach in jackets and ties, and
they shouldn't.
And there's a range here, but you saw that range at council.
Yeah, you did.
And so it looks, the presentation looks a little different, but the message was the same message.
Yep.
And that's one of our real strengths. We have some diversity, but the diversity is around this, real central, powerful themes of the gospel and the church.
Right.
The power of the church. Here's an announcement I guess I'm going to make.
Please.
I came here and I haven't notified the other PMs or the denomination at large. So if they
all watch the show.
We'll find out if
this is just as good.
Well, anyway, I came here. Moscow Christ Church and Trinity here in Moscow, CREC churches here, offered to host Council 2023. There was a little resistance to that just because of it's hard to get to Moscow, Idaho.
It's a little challenging.
But it was hard to get to Monroe too. You have you can't just do it in a hub city. You have to take the next flight, and we had some flight delays and problems there. And I came here to consider looking at venues and things, but I've decided we're doing it here. So we are doing the council. There's the scoop, and it's going to be great. And between Christ Church and Trinity and the delegates, we're going to have about 3,000 CREC people here. And we're trying to do a venue where we can do a worship service with the whole entire group, which would just be really awesome. You guys going to have someone filming it there and put it up on Cross Politics. So
that would be phenomenal.
2023 fall. We don't have dates yet.
That's council. That's where everybody, all the churches, all the denominations across the world,
all of our presbyteries will be here. Everybody will be here, and presumably the denomination will be a little bit bigger a couple of years.
It's a great way. If you're still on the fence, then why would you still be on the fence in 2023? But it would be a great way to meet us. Come sit in.
And if you're interested,
you're a pastor or an elder, or church
leader, a lot of these people, they're contacts that you guys have through Cross Politic or people that follow Douglas Wilson and whatnot. But if you want to come and see Moscow and meet these guys and be here, that would be a good time to come and also check out our denomination and come to a Presbyterian meetings, come to council meetings.
Well, I got a couple church leaders coming to our spring Presbytery and everything.
That is going to be. We are going to have a blast. We are going to have a blast. So before we go, if you're a pastor and you're thinking about right now, I know a lot of people in the SBC that are considering what do I do? They don't want to leave. They don't feel like they can stay and put their money into institutions that are failing them. Mm-hmm. What's the website that they can go to understand more about the CREC, how it operates? What do they do?
You know what? I don't know what our actual letters are. We can look it up.
CRECchurches.org.
CRECchurches.org. CRECchurches. Is it org?
I believe it's org.
If you Google CREC, it'll come up. It comes up.
The first one will be Capital Religion Education Council. Then you scroll down and it's
CREChurches.org.
CRECchurches.org. And Knox, one of the things that I partly because of you guys have a fairly large following of Reformed Baptist folk.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're getting more pulled into Reformed thinking and covenantal thinking. Now, that's encouraging, and I get emails fairly regularly from people saying, I'm in the Southern Baptist Convention, or maybe we're independent Reformed Baptist Church.
Right.
How do we fit? Can we fit in the CREC? And I'm telling them all, yes, come. They can come in under the London Baptist.
1689, yep. Uh-huh.
They don't, affiliate with us if you like us and hang out with us. You're going to change some. But even people that come to our church locally, they don't have to become a Paedo Baptist. They don't have to become Paedo Communion to join our church. They can come there and fellowship with us and be members of our church. Yep. Now, over time, they start hearing things they don't even know about and haven't heard about it. And here, our understanding of those things, our biblical arguments, maybe we convince some of them. But we're one of those few denominations where even if you don't,
You still
we love you. Welcome
Yeah.
here. We're going to fight that good fight together. We're
Right.
believing the gospel. We're covenantal. A lot of these guys are becoming, the Reformed Baptist guys are becoming more post-millennial. That's part of the attraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's really strong within our denomination.
Yep.
And come and join us. Come and fight the fight.
Very
with
good.
us.
Thank you so much.
CREchurches.org.
CRECchurches.org. Pastor, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it.
Coming back.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Crust Politic.
American colleges have become more hostile to the faith of young Christians than the beaches of Normandy were to the Allies. Literally.
Undergraduate training wasn't always a death trap of unbelief. Once colleges were boot camps for body, mind, and soul.
Now, most college students spend their days in tax-funded adult daycares with all the intellectual rigor of lazy rivers, safe spaces, and complimentary condoms.
And in our recent COVID faux-apocalypse, those daycares became prisons almost overnight. Cover your face, line up for your shot, stay in your room, but don't worry, the condoms were still complimentary. At New St. Andrews, you are not on vacation, you are not in daycare, and you won't be herded into a dorm. From week 1, you'll be treated like an adult.
You're responsible for paying your own rent and developing your own grocery budget. Or going hungry. Get a shot, or don't. Mask up, or don't. Most of our students even work part-time jobs on top of the 40-hour class workload. It's part of the anti-fragile hustle and grind that distinguishes our graduates from the majority of their own generation, and that employers and graduate schools love.
Most college graduates in the U.S. are stuck paying off loans for years. New St. Andrews sets you up to graduate debt-free and dangerous, ready to pursue grad school, a family, or business opportunities in the real world without any reliance on pork subsidies from Mother America and with no weepy need for safe spaces. The real world isn't a cushy place. No one owes you success. You are entitled to exactly jack squat in this life. But rich or poor, unlike your face or your freedom, your job or your business, an education and the ability to think clearly can never be taken from you as long as you are still above ground. Not by petty tyrants or cowardly clergy, not by thoughtless mobs or lab coat megalomaniacs. At New St. Andrews College, you'll learn from teachers whose ideas equipped men and women to build Western civilization in the first place, and which will be used again to defend and rebuild what has been lost as the West has faltered into decay, losing her faith and her mind.
Yes, most of our best teachers are dead. But our classical Christian liberal arts education is how we've been graduating thoughtful, articulate outlaws and leaders with spines for the last quarter century. The intellectual and theological bedrock beneath the Judeo-Christian West is what you'll study, engage with, write about, and own. It is what you will debate in class and present in public as you learn to live like forbidden fire, surrounded by the darkness of unbelief, manifesting God's truth, goodness, and beauty to all who live around you.
Training like this can't happen over Zoom. At New St. Andrews, we believe whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but a companion of real or virtual fools will suffer harm. Your peers shouldn't be your spiritual leaders. You should have a real flesh and blood in-person church for that.
NSA is in the heart of downtown Moscow, Idaho, where you will witness men and women building Christendom on every corner. Where else are you going to be able to break bread in your professors' homes, debate great literature with them while their kids are playing, sing psalms while being arrested with them, catch turtles with them?
No one comes to NSA to get lost in the crowd. You might be able to hide in a graduating class of thousands, but our classes are better measured in dozens. You will grow in this program or you will tap out. And when you finish, you'll be ready for life, in whatever moments and scenes and struggles God may have prepared for you. We are training students who worship and march and study and fellowship and sing and write and start businesses and raise kids that no one can mask, cancel, or bury. We follow the King of Kings who knew the way through the mob and out of the grave. We fight to rebuild Christendom in the ruins, in our families, and in our businesses, in the cities where we live, in the countries where we go, in the congregations where we worship. Your mom may worry that Moscow, Idaho is many miles from home. She should worry more about how spiritually distant even a nearby godless campus is.
After 4 years in a Christian community like ours, you will grow much closer to your family. Don't stay distant. Click the link today to schedule a visit to New St. Andrews College.